On this edition of ITG, it's time to preview another big college football weekend with Phil Steele. Big games across the country, big games in the Big 12 as we head down the home stretch here of the final weeks of the college football season. All of that and more on this edition of In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With special guest, Phil Steele.
Author of the College Football Bible.
You can see things before they happen.
Well, I definitely like West Virginia's offensive line.
All you got to do is bet on the winner and you'll never lose.
I like the Mountaineers to win this one.
Taylor, touchdown!
To me, the key matchup here is that West Virginia run game. Hey, a real pleasure being on. Thanks for having me on the In the Gun podcast.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 211 of your new favorite WVU football podcast, and it's time for another Phil Steele Friday. And no, I am not Jed Drenning. I am not Schuyler Callahan. You might be a little confused right now. What the heck is Schuyler doing here, not only on a Phil Steele Friday, but solo on a Phil Steele Friday? Well, Schuyler, he's still in the first days of new dad duty. Jed, he has some prior engagements today. So you know what? This is going to be awesome. I'm going to sit down with Phil Steele, virtual conversation here over Zoom, and chat with a guy whose magazines I grew up reading every single summer as a kid. We're going to keep things pretty standard across the board here, but it'll just be myself and Phil Steele this week to get you teed up for I tell you what, just an incredible slate of games across the Big 12 and the country here, college football week 12, as things are getting thick. The road is narrowing, just 3 weeks left in the regular season, and so a lot of moving and shaking, a lot of conference standings on the line every single weekend here through the month of November, and it's going to be a fun conversation with Phil to tee it all up and get us ready as we head down the home stretch here of this college football season. I got to thank our sponsors here before we get to Phil. A big thanks to Bet Online. The game starts here. For being a presenting sponsor of ITG. A big shout out and a big thank you to our guy JR and to everybody at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. A big thank you to Fortis as well, too, for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. And our friends at Johnston Equipment, make sure you're checking out their location on Route 33 between Buchanan and Weston. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll also notice, I mean, it's early in the morning as I'm recording this with Phil. So I figured I might as well bust out the In the Gun coffee mug here. Most of the time when we're recording, it's like 7:30 at night, not 7:30 in the morning. So I got my little ITG mug. We're going to have Phil Steele on the other side. Plenty to get into, of course, including a bit of a Big 12 conference elimination game in Morgantown, if you will. Two programs that still have plenty to play for in Baylor and WVU. Of course, you know we'll get Phil Steele's thoughts on the Mountaineers matchup, as well as the entire weekend of college football. We'll do that when we return on the other side. You are In the Gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com.
Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
Back in the gun here as we roll along and get ready for another big weekend of college football. And who better to tee it all up for us than our buddy Phil Steele. Phil, a bunch of games across the country and in the Big 12 that I want to get into with you here as the road narrows in November. And it's certainly narrowing in the SEC. You've got two ranked teams, Missouri, South Carolina, kind of both in the middle of the pack of that SEC right now. Missouri in South Carolina. How do you think this one plays out?
Yeah, and I'm pretty bullish on South Carolina right now. I think they're a team that when you look at their defensive front seven, it might be among the best, if not the best in the country. Could put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Love the way that Lenora Sellers is operating the offense. And had he stayed healthy against LSU, they would have won that game. And right now, South Carolina would be in contention for a playoff spot. And then they also lost to Alabama by only 2 points. Meanwhile, with Missouri, it's sort of been the product of a soft schedule this year. A fortunate win last week against Oklahoma. They did get past Auburn. Vanderbilt missed a key field goal at the end of the game. But a soft schedule overall, and when they've taken to the road, they got blown out by Texas A&M and Alabama. I like South Carolina to win this one by a couple of touchdowns.
Well, another team from the state of South Carolina is Clemson. They are in Pittsburgh. Big ACC matchup, a pair of 7-2 teams. Pitt, 2 losses in a row. They've fallen outside of the top 25. Clemson sitting at number 20 right now. Jed, pardon me. Phil, does Clemson make WVU fans? It's early in the morning. I'm sorry about that. Phil, does Clemson make WVU fans happy and hand Pitt their third straight loss?
You know, I think they do. When I look at Pitt, I see a team that was 7-0, but sort of did it with smoke and mirrors. I mean, a couple of comeback wins against Cincy and West Virginia. California missed a field goal at the end of the game. Then SMU pretty much beat them down. It was 48-11 at one point, and then losing at home to Virginia. And I'm bullish on this Clemson team. Now, the Louisville game surprised me a little bit that they lost that one at home. They did have a 31-19 first down edge. The Georgia game at the beginning of the year is the one that set everybody back. But other than that, they've been playing great football, both sides of the ball. And they're only giving up 337 yards per game. And I mention that because they've given up a lot of garbage yards. You go back to the North Carolina State game, they led that thing 59-14 in the fourth quarter, gave up 200 yards in the fourth quarter, gave up 150 yards and 2 touchdowns to Virginia in the last 3 minutes of the game. So I think their defense is even better than the numbers indicate. And I don't think it's going to be too much of an intimidating environment for them going into Pitt. So I like Clemson minus the points to beat Pitt by a couple of touchdowns or more.
That's what we like to hear. Finally, before we get to the Big 12, a classic Big 10 matchup here, Phil, with Oregon traveling to Wisconsin. Undefeated Ducks, 10-0, playing great football. Wisconsin, 5-4, some ups, some downs. We know, though, Camp Randall, always a tough place to play for anybody who has to travel there to Madison, Wisconsin. Do you think Oregon can get out of there unscathed?
I do think Oregon wins the game. However, I think Wisconsin keeps it closer than expected. Now, that may surprise some because if you look at Wisconsin and you see they lost to Alabama by 32, they lost to USC by 17, they lost to Penn State by 15, and they lost to Iowa by 32, and you say, well, they can't really play with the big boys. But upon further examination, I thought they played a really good first half against Bama. USC, they actually led 21-10 at the half. Penn State, they led 10-7 at the half. And Iowa was fairly close at the half. And when you look at my power ratings, my average game grades, I'm surprised that they only have Oregon favored by about a touchdown in this game. I thought it would have been much more. So I'm going to go with my power ratings in this one and call for Wisconsin to keep it closer than expected. But I do think Oregon really doesn't have any weaknesses and is capable of going on the road and getting the straight up win.
Going to be an interesting one, absolutely. Into the Big 12 we go here. Tonight, as this episode drops, Phil, Houston in Arizona. Two teams that certainly haven't had the type of year that they wanted to, I think particularly Arizona, but a chance here with a couple games left to build some momentum in the end of the year. Houston, Arizona tonight. How do you think this one plays out?
Yeah, what I've seen from Arizona is a team that's been struggling, and basically their offense is Noah Fafita and Tatora McMillan. Slow that down, and you slow down their offense, which they have. If you look at them in the last 4 weeks, they've averaged 320 yards per game and just 16 points per game. And Houston, despite their record, they got a hell of a defense, Wes. They're number 10 in the country, holding opponents to 92 yards per game below their season average. So with that defense, I do think they slow Arizona down. I like the way Zion Chris has been moving the offense the last couple of games. Now, granted, just 232 and 289 yards, but they played Utah and Kansas State's defenses, two of the top defenses in the Big 12. Now they're taking on an Arizona defense that's given up 450 yards per game the last 4 weeks. I actually think Houston's a better team here, so I'm going to take the Cougars to snag the road win.
Utah is in Colorado at 10 a.m. local time for the kickoff there in Boulder. And maybe, Phil, a tale of two teams whose seasons have gone separately. I think Utah came into the year with a lot of expectations, hasn't worked out for them. Colorado came into the year, I think a lot of people thought maybe volatile situation. Could this all blow up in year two of Deion Sanders? They're 7-2, ranked in the top 20 and playing for a Big 12 championship berth. Can Colorado keep it humming there early in the morning in Boulder?
Yeah, and two key factors, I think, Wes, really turned the fortune of both of these teams. For Utah, it was losing Cam Rising.
Yeah, no doubt.
They looked like the Utah should look early, but then when they lost Cam Rising, Isaac Wilson, sort of average. Brandon Rose took over at QB, and Brandon Rose is now out for the year, and they lost another quarterback prior to the season. So they've actually lost 3 quarterbacks for the season. That's really derailed them. Now, they still are playing great defense. They're holding opponents to 77 yards per game below their average. In Big 10 play, Big 12 play, they're number 1, holding opponents to 319 yards per game. But that quarterback injury has really derailed them. And if you're a Utah fan, you might say the referees derailed them last week against BYU.
Or
now,
the Utah AD.
Yeah, that's right. And for Colorado, I think the key play to their season was that Hail Mary pass against Baylor.
No doubt.
Because they had been blown out by Nebraska, and they were on the verge of they should have lost to Baylor. So they would have been 2-2, maybe the season going nowhere, but that gave them life. Then they went on the road the next week and beat UCF, gave Kansas State a game, and now they've been dynamite the last 3 games. Beat a really good Cincinnati team a couple of weeks ago. So this is a Colorado team on the rise versus a Utah team that seems to be struggling. I got to go with Colorado to get the win at home here.
Arizona State, K-State. Phil, we talked about just a few minutes ago, it's kind of a separation game between two 7-2 ACC teams in Clemson and Pitt. Maybe you could say the same here. 2 7-2 teams, Arizona State at a ranked K-State. 2 teams that both still have plenty to play for down the stretch and a little bit of a separation Saturday here. Does K-State hold strong at home, or do you think Arizona State can pull off the upset?
I definitely like Kansas State here. I like the situation too. First of all, Kansas State's used to playing in these big games. They've been contending for the Big 10, Big 12 title for quite some time. You look at their last game, that loss to Houston, they had a 21-10 first down edge. They had the yardage edge. They really controlled the game, but they lost. So they're off a misleading final. Meanwhile, you look at Arizona State's last game, they were outgained by UCF 406-260, out first down 26-18, yet they won. So they're sort of off a misleading final. Also for Arizona State, they came into the season with 0 expectations. Now they're sort of playing with the house's money. They're 7-2. But it's an unusual game for them because they're now in contention. They've got things to play for, and I don't know if their players are ready for this type of situation, this type of game. They've gone on the road and lost at Texas Tech, also at Cincinnati. I definitely like Kansas State at home. I think they're the better team, plus they're more used to playing in these big games.
Pair of teams that are looking to get some bad taste out of their mouth. Cincinnati has dropped a couple in a row now after a solid start. Iowa State has dropped a couple in a row after being undefeated and ranked in the top 10 in the country. Cincinnati traveling to Ames. 2 teams, like I said, kind of desperately looking to get back on the right track. You think Iowa State does that at home, or might Cincinnati go on the road and give the Cyclones all they can handle?
Yeah, I think Cincinnati's going to give them all they can handle. I've been very impressed with the Bearcat team. And if you're a West Virginia fan, you had to feel maybe a little fortunate coming out of there with the 31-24 win last week. That nice pass by Sorsby that he just sort of floated in the air for the interception for a touchdown. Cincinnati had a 24-10 first down edge, 436, 248-yard edge, and lost the game. And I'll go back to a game earlier this year. They played Texas Tech. And I thought they outplayed Texas Tech. Once again, 29-21 first downs, out-yarded them, outplayed them, came up short. The Pittsburgh game, big lead in that game. And then they sort of let up in the second half, and it bit them in the butt, and they lost. So this is a Cincinnati team that could be much better than their record right now. And Iowa State, 2 weeks ago, I thought they were the best team in the Big 12. They've disappointed me the last 2 weeks. I thought they would win each week. They did not. They are a very good team, but seem to be playing to the level of their competition. And if you do that with Cincinnati, you're in trouble. Yeah. So I think this game goes right down to the wire. To me, it's a toss-up game. I would take Cincinnati plus the points in a possible upset.
The lone undefeated team left the Big 12 Conference, BYU, 9-0. And Phil, I don't know if it's a lucky rabbit's foot or a lucky horseshoe, or maybe just sometimes teams have years like this where you get the bounces that go your way, but it certainly seems like it's been like that for BYU at home against a Kansas team that is struggling, just 3-6 on the year. But obviously, we always know what that's like when you're coming off an emotional high, or sometimes low as well, too, of a big rivalry game like BYU is. Are they going to be able to knock that off, keep focused, take care of business against Kansas?
Yeah, Wes, it sort of reminds me of TCU 2 years ago. Remember the type of season they had where every week it was an escape?
No doubt.
And somehow they got to the national title game, and then whoops, there's the national title game. But BYU's a great story this year. They're not dominant by any stretch of the imagination. Probably should have lost to Utah. Probably should have lost to Oklahoma State. Maybe a couple other games in there. They're only plus 16 yards per game in Big 12 play. And you look at Kansas and you say, they're a 3-16. But remember, they led in the second half against Illinois. They led in the fourth quarter against UNLV. They led West Virginia by 2 scores. They led TCU in the second half. They led Arizona State with minutes to go in the game, and they almost upset Kansas State on the road. Other than that, they've beaten Iowa State, beaten Houston. So they're a team that could be much better than its record. They're only minus 20 yards per game in Big 12 play. Jalen Daniels is starting to look like the Jalen Daniels everybody thought they had at the start of the year. And when teamed with Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, that's a pretty potent combo. So I think this is going to be a really good game. The amazing thing is Vegas knows about these two teams as well. They have BYU a 3-point favorite. Now, how do you take a 9-0 team at home against a 3-6 team and make them only a 3-point favorite? Well, what I just explained to you, Vegas knows about these teams. So I think it'll be a good game. I'll lean with BYU to escape again. And by the way, the line's down to 2.5 in Vegas now. So they're saying BYU's not even better than Kansas. It's pretty surprising.
Phil, I by no means think I'm a genius, but I have figured out that it is better, it is wiser to listen to Vegas because they typically have a beat on these things better than most of us. Yeah, I think that's a great call by you. And then finally, a Baylor team headed to Morgantown, 4 p.m. on Saturday. Phil, a Baylor team that, in their last 3 games has been humming. They are coming off their bye week, though, kind of maybe, I don't know. It's always nice to have a bye week at the end of the season because the bumps and bruises are a little extra at that point. But when you're playing the way they were in their previous 3 games, maybe you would have rather just kept that thing humming against the WVU team that has a little momentum and a little feel good now. A WVU team that, if they take care of business, is still alive for a Big 12 championship berth. A big one for the Mountaineer faithful and for Baylor fans who are hoping that this is an upstart at the end of the season here. How do you think we play out in Morgantown on Saturday?
Yeah, this Baylor team has looked great, haven't they? Since Sawyer Robertson took over at QB, they've got Bryson Washington, Dawson Pendergrass running well. Robertson adds to the run game, very dangerous on the ground. And I think Robertson, when you look at it passing-wise, a nice 17-4 ratio. It's pretty dangerous. I think West Virginia is going to benefit from last week's win. Give them a little bit of momentum. You come out with 2 losses. Now you're back at home. They know they need to play well at home. The Kansas State loss, the Iowa State loss, I know fans weren't too happy about that. But I look at the two teams' defense, and it's surprising because Dave Aranda is a defensive genius, but maybe he just doesn't have the players this year. The last 4 weeks are allowing 469 yards per game and 68% completions. I think these two teams are pretty close. I would have had West Virginia favored by 3. I'm surprised they're a 3-point home dog. So I like West Virginia to pull the upset and get the win at home. I'm going to go with West Virginia here.
I love it. I love it. Phil, don't tell anybody you heard this from me, all right? I can't say this because I don't want to jinx it, but Baylor they've never done the thing in Morgantown, all right? I don't want to say it. It's like when a pitcher has a perfect game, but the word that starts with a W that rhymes with sin, Baylor has never done that in Morgantown, so hopefully we keep that rolling. Last one for you, Phil. Over the last 3 games, that Baylor run game is averaging 285 yards per game. That is obviously the best mark in Power 5 football over the last 3 games. A new WVU defense here now, right, in kind of their second game in the post-Jordan Leslie era. Do you think WVU has enough to at least slow down that Baylor run game that has been rolling just enough?
I do. In fact, I like the matchup. I think West Virginia's run defense has been solid all year. The weakness has been the pass defense, the secondary. And while Baylor's got a capable quarterback, I think West Virginia can slow down Baylor.
I love it. I love it. Phil, thank you so much. I always love when I get to fill in here and chat with you, and thanks for letting me kick all these games around with you. Before I let you go, as always, offer for our listeners before we get out of here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Wes. Yeah, up right now, I got the Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections, a bunch of free plays for you. I got 5 free selections and 4 more quick hitters. So 9 free plays, and you just go to philsteele.com, and right there on the front menu, you'll see it under the daily blogs. It says Phil Steele Tour with selections. Take the tour, you go to the YouTube channel, and you get yourself 9 free plays for this weekend. Should be a big winning week.
I love it. I love it. Phil, thanks so much for the time as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, great chatting football with you today, Wes. A lot of fun.
Always love it. Always love it. I'll be back to wrap this thing up on the other side. You are in the gun.
There are better-known tractors in the world than Coyote. Ones with bigger names, longer histories, more popular hats, cute toy lines. But there's not a single tractor ever been built that's better equipped to do the dirty work. So we'll just focus on what really matters. Coyote, we dig dirt.
Now at Johnston Equipment, get 0% financing for 72 months, plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. Visit us on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan.
Well, there you have it, folks. Phil Steele on another big weekend of college football. It's November. That road is getting narrow, and there's some big games, obviously, for your Mountaineers Saturday as well against Baylor. I love the optimism that Phil has on that one. I feel like he's had his finger on the pulse of this WVU team pretty well this season. I feel like when he's liked our chances, we've won more often than not. When Phil hasn't liked our chances, we've lost more often than not. Hey, that's why he's the czar of college football, right? He knows these things, baby. Fantastic stuff. Always love getting a chance to catch up with Phil Steele, both about a big slate of Big 12 games and then some other big games across the country as well, too. A recap of how we did last week. No over-under pick'em here to get us out of here this week because it's just me. There's no real back and forth. But what I will do is recap for you how we did last week, how Jed and I did. First question was WVU has averaged 4.7 red zone trips per game on the season, most in the Big 12, where Cincinnati has been stingy in that regard, particularly at home. So was it over under 3.5 red zone trips by WVU? We both said under, and we were both correct. We both said it was going to be 3, and we were both correct. WVU went to the red zone 3 times, scored 2 touchdowns from there. Obviously, had the 2 defensive touchdowns as well, too. So Jed and I both got that one correct. Turnover margin, Cincy +1 in the turnover margin battle, WVU -6 overall. So the question, but WVU had won the turnover battle in consecutive league games for the first time since 2019. So can they do it 3 games in a row? With Jeff Coons as what was his first game as the WVU DC. Jed and I both said yes, and the answer was yes. WVU was +2 in that turnover margin. Had 3 forced turnovers, the pick 6, the forced fumble, and then the strip sack scoop and score as well. WVU has now won the turnover battle in a 3rd straight conference road game for the first time since 2008, pardon me. Jed and I both said they would. They did that. And so Jed and I both got those correct. And then finally, in WVU's last trip to Cincinnati in 2011, that was at Paul Brown Stadium. Remember, I was there, baby. That was the game that Ian Smith blocked the Cincinnati field goal at the end for WVU to win. The Mountaineers won despite rushing for just 32 yards in that game. Remember, Gino threw for over 370. Cincinnati's Isaiah Peed, we remember him, led all rushers with 113 yards. He was, of course, the Big East Offensive Player of the Year, which was a farce. It should have been Gino. Just like it was in basketball, it should have been Kevin Jones, but instead it was that dude from Marquette whose name is escaping me right now. Crowder? Was that his last name? Regardless, no one remembers his name because he was a jabroni, unlike Kevin Jones. But the question was, will this game's leading rusher top that 113 mark? I said no. Jed said yes. Corey Kiner was the leading rusher with 91 yards. So, of course, this is why Schuyler and Jed didn't want to do this episode, because I went 3 for 3 in the pick'em, baby. Ooh, yeah, brother, what you gonna do when Wes runs wild on you? I mean, it's pretty obvious. If we're ranking in our ITG family, the football experts, Phil Steele's the president. I'm the vice president, okay? And then everyone else is just vying for cabinet positions. How do you like that as a timely joke? But yes, I did get I think that's the first time when I've filled in on Phil Friday that I've gotten the 3 over-unders correct. So I'll take it. I'll brush my shoulders off. I'll pat myself on the back, and then I'll just retire for the rest of the season so I can go out on a high note, kind of like Bill Murray in Space Jam. I'm retired. I'm undefeated. I'm moving on with my life's work. Thanks to Schuyler for throwing this together, as always, for him and Jed for just curating a fun Phil Steele Friday format over the last couple years here. Big thanks to Phil for joining me as well, and all of yins for tuning in. Here's what we're going to do. A reminder, and I know I plugged this in our preview episode. We do have our preview episode out for the big upcoming Baylor game this weekend. Make sure you're checking that out if you haven't seen it yet. 4 o'clock. Kickoff. That means we'll be going wild in the Peach Lot. I did, again, plug this on our last episode, but if you want to swing by and say hello, just look for, we fly a big In the Gun flag and a big Grateful Dead WVU flag. You can find us in the Peach Lot. Much like Deion Sanders always says, I ain't hard to find. Come get some food. Come grab a beer. Come say hello. It's always nice. The noon games, it's tough because, we get there and it's kind of like you tailgate for an hour or two and then you're packing up and going in. But for these afternoon games and evening games, the 3:30, 4 o'clock games, the night games, obviously, we're there for a few hours. So if you're poking around Morgantown on Saturday, if you're walking from tailgate to tailgate, you're more than welcome to pop into the Peach Lot and say what's up to me and my crew of rowdy friends. And snag a beer and maybe grab some food as we get ready for hopefully a big WVU victory that would certainly tee up an interesting final couple weeks of the season for our Mountaineers. But that's the goal, right? When we reconvene here next week, let's still have something to play for down the stretch. Sound good? Sound like a plan? All right, good talk. I'll see you out there. I'm Wes Schuyler. For the best teammates in the business, Schuyler Callahan, Big O, the beer truck, Owen Schmidt, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care. Let's go hunt some bear. You've been in the gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.